Ahoy there, friends. Hope you're doing well on this Sunday. I just wanted to pop in here to remind everyone that I am once again doing the postcard exchange, something I did a few years ago that there was some minor issues with, but I was also living in a different state at the time, so maybe USPS here is better about things. If you go to my community tab, you will find a post that tells you the post office box to send postcards to. There's a lot of the word post. Just send your postcards to that box and I will send you one back, typically with a free sticker, if I have them, which I do right now. So send a postcard, just saying hi, wishing the best of the year, and get a free sticker back. And that's all. Enjoy the stories. When Claire and I got married back in 2013, I thought I had found my person. She was a wonderful person. She was a third grade teacher and talked about how she had always wanted to be a teacher since she was a kid. And she showed it. She was passionate about her work, her students, and she always came home with stories about the funny things they would say or the breakthroughs they'd make. The look on their face when they finally understood something was always so pure and fun to see, and I loved seeing her light up as she talked about it too. We spent a lot of time together, making sure to at least have one date night a week. We'd go hiking on the weekends, maybe try a new restaurant or go see a movie. We always found something to do, and for the first 3 years of our marriage, it was everything I had hoped a marriage would be. Then things started to shift, and it was hard. It started small. She would snap at me over nothing, the way I loaded the dishwasher or how I put the dishes away. She would be mad at how often I cleared my throat, or how I drank from my cup. She blamed it on work stress, claiming the administration was demanding, that parents were difficult, or the workload was just crushing her. Whatever it was, I believed her. I gave her space, tried to be supportive, and just assured both of us that the hard times would soon pass, and we would have a few good days before it would happen again. But the good days would become fewer and farther in between. There was one particular brutal week where she had barely spoken to me except to criticize, and I suggested that she consider leaving her job. I made good money, and would even be willing to take on some more time if it meant making her happy and less stressed, until she could find something that she was happier with. We also didn't have any kids or pets, and our mortgage was manageable, so we would have been fine. My thought was that if that job was making her that miserable, then it can't really be a dream job, can it? But apparently that was the stupidest thing that I could have suggested. She made comments about how she didn't need me to take care of her, how she was her own person, and that if I tried a little harder, then she wouldn't be so stressed about staying in such a miserable job. I was stunned. We were more than comfortable. That is why I suggested it. It's not like we were living paycheck to paycheck. In fact, I paid most of the bills and her checks went to her daily and monthly subscriptions, between her magazines, our streaming services, and her daily coffee stops that she made. As far as I was aware, nothing was going unpaid. I just dropped it, apologized for suggesting it, and then never brought it up again. Over the next year and a half, Claire became someone that I didn't recognize. The verbal abuse escalated. I was lazy, I was boring, I was holding her back. She started coming home later and later, claiming faculty meetings or parent conferences and just too much work to take home, especially with me around, as I would just be a distraction for her. She even made me sleep in the spare room because my breathing kept her awake. Not my snoring, mind you, just my breathing. We were practically roommates at best, and hostile ones at that. Finally, one night, it took a lot from me, but I mentioned divorce. She looked at me like I had just insulted her and slapped me across the face. She asked me why I would even bring that up, that I was being a dramatic little boy and that I needed to grow up. So she slapped me, and mocked me, but apparently our marriage was completely fine. I never brought up divorce again. I continued living my life happily on the outside. I told no one about our relationship. As far as they all knew, we were happy. But at home, I found myself in the living room until she came home, and then I would hide in the spare bedroom, where I practically spent almost a year of my life. Then I got a text one night that changed everything. I was home a little early on a Wednesday, and thought that I would try to do something nice for a change. I texted Claire and asked if she wanted me to pick up some Greek food for her. It was one of her favorites, and since I was home early, I thought having dinner ready might put her in a good mood. She responded, declining my offer, saying that she was going to be out late. Maybe that would be good too, so I got dinner for myself and lounged in the living room, thinking that I would go to bed when she got home. But then I got a text from a buddy of mine. It was a picture with text that said, "This looks just like Claire, doesn't it?" The picture was definitely Claire, my wife, at a restaurant about 40 minutes from her school, and sitting next to a man that I didn't know, with their arms all over each other, faces closing in for a kiss. My buddy that sent it to me was also a coworker of mine. He had a kid that was actually in my wife's class, and his kid pointed out to him, "Oh, that's Ms. K." He knew who she was, and I still appreciate him telling me, because I don't know if I ever would have found out. I waited up for her that night, and when she finally came home around 11 p.m., I was sitting in the living room with the TV turned down. I couldn't pay attention to anything. I couldn't think of anything other than that picture. All this time, she was miserable at home, but she was out, happy as could be with someone else. So why the hell stay in the marriage? I confronted her about it. She immediately tried to play it off, calling me jealous, claiming I was acting like a whiny child. And then I showed her the photo. That is when she changed her demeanor. First, the tears started, trying to guilt trip that it was the stress, and then she begged me to give her another chance, pleading and promising to break it off and that she would change. She claimed that she loved me, and that we could work it out, and then suggested counseling, something she had previously laughed at me for suggesting. But I stood my ground, and I told her no. I told her I was going to stay with my brother. I had already packed some stuff and crammed it into my truck. I told her that she needed to find a place too because I was selling the house. I didn't need something that big, and I knew that she wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage and all the bills on her own. That was hard. I had to call my brother and finally tell them what happened. He was upset that I was doing it all alone, but was glad that I had chosen to reach out to him. He was living in a small house by himself. Never married, no kids. It was back to being us, back when we were in college, which was at least a good time. I had better days, and slowly I became the person that I used to be. The divorce should have been straightforward. Again, we had no children, there was a clear division of assets, but Claire's lawyer filed delay after delay, missing documents, scheduling conflicts, requests for additional discoveries. Weeks turned into months, and it just became a silly dance with her. I continued to stay at my brother's place in the meantime, not wanting any new property or money exchange to muck up the divorce more than she was already trying to. But apparently the terms of the divorce weren't looking good enough for her, and she decided to try to take it into her own hands. I had been watching TV with my brother one Saturday evening after dinner when the doorbell rang. My brother answered it, but I could see the door as well as the officer and well-dressed man on the other side, making me sit straight up. And of course, they asked for me. My brother let them in, and they asked if there was anyone else in the home, and if we were expecting anyone. Then, the man in the suit, who turned out to be some kind of detective, asked about Claire and our relationship, and then specifically, our divorce. They asked if I had gotten any threats or confrontations, and I told them no. I was increasingly becoming more confused and alarmed, and my brother asks them what this was all about. Their reason knocked the wind out of me, and I will never forget it. Well, Mr. K, we've got credible evidence that your wife solicited someone to have you killed. I remember it just circling in my head. The woman that I dated, married, shared a bed with, a home with, she wanted me killed? The detective explained that they had an operation set up for someone unrelated, but she happened to come across their setup and also took the bait. So they got two suspects for the same trap. She explained that she wanted it to look like an accident so she could get everything. My life insurance, retirement accounts, everything in my will, all of it. And then she would have a clean slate to start over. All of this was documented by authorities, and since I was not the initial target, they had to track me down to make sure I was safe. And when they learned the story from my side, they said they could work with my lawyers, the courts, etc., to make sure that she would get nothing but charges. Unfortunately for her, I had already changed everything. I was already adjusting my will for some things, but after the night of the picture, I changed it all. Everything I had would go to my brother, my sister, and my sister's kids. She wouldn't have gotten anything. The charges came fast. She was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and solicitation of murder for hire, as well as a handful of other related felonies. The divorce was expedited after her arrest, too. She still tried to fight it from jail, but I heard her lawyer dropped her, and the judge wasn't interested in her delays anymore. She ended up taking a plea deal, and the divorce was completed, and I finally started getting my life back. Sometimes, when our anniversary or special dates go by, I do kind of still think of the good times. I wonder when she changed, and if there was anything that I could have done to get her back. To keep that Claire that I had married. But I know it wasn't just me. All she had to do was leave, but she didn't. She refused. And then the fact that she tried to have me killed, that told me all that I needed to know about what was important to her. I know this was the better outcome because I can't say for sure that I would still be here to tell this story if I did stick around, and if I had never gotten that picture of her with that other man. Alright, so this story might be a little different, but to me, it was a very scary and trying time, so I wanted to share it. I mean, we all have different things that are important to us, right? My ex-wife and I were together for a good decade. We had great times, saw new places, and for the most part, it was wonderful. We never had kids, which I'm now grateful for, but we did have a dog, Biscuit, who was, without exaggeration, the best thing to come out of our relationship. We got him as a puppy about 6 months after our wedding. My parents got a puppy as a gift after their wedding as a joke. Basically a, quote, test before you have kids. But they had that dog for the rest of his life. He was like an older brother to me, and I really liked the idea of us doing it. Now, I didn't just show up with a dog. It was a conversation we had, and she agreed with the idea, thinking it would be sweet. So we went and picked him out together. A little golden retriever mix. But I was the one that trained him. I walked him every morning and took him out at night. I took care of all the vet visits and expenses. I was typically the one who paid for the dog food and treats, because he does eat a more expensive brand for medical reasons, but none of that really bothered me. She would play with him, be affectionate for the most part, and so forth, but Otherwise, it was becoming pretty clear that he was more my dog and my responsibility than anything. Which, again, was fine by me. I loved that dog, and he was the most lovable thing back. Jennifer just didn't seem to have that connection with pets. Maybe it's because she was an only child, or maybe she wasn't a big animal person. I never really knew, but she just didn't have that same relationship with Biscuit. Then, when our relationship started falling apart, I knew it was going to be messy. Jennifer had always been vindictive when she didn't get her way. It was one of the ugliest things about her. I was the one that asked for the divorce after finding out she'd been lying about our finances. We shared expenses, like I paid the rent on our townhome and she paid the utilities. We both had other random services we paid for, and we each had our own credit card. But it took a while for her to finally admit that she had a lot more credit card debt than she ever told me about, when our water was shut off because she hadn't paid it. We were comfortable with our income and the bills we had. We were both open and honest, or so I thought, about what needed to be paid. But she had opened up several credit cards in both of our names and was maxing them out. Now, I will take part of the blame, because I should have paid more attention to the stuff coming in. But I had always just assumed that she was covering the bills, and what she did with her money afterwards was her thing. But now she had lines in my name that I didn't even know about. There were other things that piled onto it, so I figured it was best if we just split our stuff and go our separate ways. I even agreed to help on 2 credit cards that she put me on instead of claiming fraud. But one thing I was certain of was that I would be taking Biscuit. I asked her about him, and she didn't hesitate in telling me to take him with me. Of course, I am talking about my ex, though, and I should have known that it wouldn't be that easy. Biscuit stayed at the townhome until I found an apartment that allowed dogs, and thankfully it didn't take long. I had texts telling her that I would be coming for Biscuit and his stuff the following weekend, after I had everything moved out. That way I would be able to spend the weekend at home with him. He had only ever known that townhome, so I didn't want to leave him in a strange new place. She agreed to this, saying that was fine. The day that I showed up in my SUV to get Biscuit and the last few of my things, I walked into the townhome to see it practically empty. All the furniture was gone, all of Jennifer's stuff, and Biscuit was gone. There were 2 large tubs left there with my items or stuff that she didn't want, I guess. I called her, but she didn't answer. I texted her, no response. I was probably looking crazy, but I called her a few times and left voicemails demanding an explanation. And finally, 4 hours later, she texted me back saying, "Biscuit is fine. We'll discuss custody." Custody. Of a dog. The next few weeks were hell. I tried everything just to get her to let me see him. I just wanted to see my dog that I had taken care of for the last 8 years. But she always had an excuse. I even offered to pay her for him, to keep him, or to even pay to see him, for crying out loud, but she refused. And she would always line it with talking about the divorce. Unfortunately, there wasn't much else I could do either. Talking to my lawyer, he said that pets are considered property, not dependents, and since we had gotten Biscuit during the marriage, he was joint property, which infuriated me even more. He wasn't property to me. He was a living being. So when I finally got the settlement details, she listed that she wanted sole ownership of Biscuit. I vented to my lawyer that she didn't even care for Biscuit like I did. Why would she want him? And he believed that she was just using him as leverage to get me to give up more for him. And to be honest, it was working. I didn't give a damn what I had left, as long as I had my dog back. All I needed was him and my car. The rest, I would figure out. Then, I got that reminder email from Biscuit's vet. He'd had a thyroid condition since he was 5 that he took medication for daily. I would pay for it and pick it up at the vet every month, and I usually picked it up a few days earlier to make sure that we never ran out. But the email that I got said that it hadn't been filled yet and that it was a week late. He hadn't been on his medication for at least a week at that point. I even called the vet to confirm this, and the tech confirmed that it had not been refilled yet. I was furious. Not only was she keeping him from me, but she was also not taking care of him. I went to my lawyer with this, and he said that we could file an emergency motion for return, since we had proof that she wasn't taking proper care of him. So, we went to court. I had all of my documents and proof of vet bills that I paid, including the missed refill. The judge must have been a fellow pet owner because I could see the slight change in his expression. He mentioned that it was definitely a credible concern and asked Jennifer where he was. I was expecting her to be difficult. I was expecting her to give every excuse and attitude as to why she couldn't or wouldn't hand him over. What I did not expect was for her to share that he was dead. My head was spinning, and I was slowly filling with rage and this overwhelming sadness. The judge asked her what had happened, and she had the gall to say that he had died about 2 weeks prior to this, and that it was due to the stress of the divorce. That it was somehow my fault. The judge looked furious, mentioning how she's wasting time on all of this when she should have reported his passing when it happened. She snapped back, annoyed, saying that she was the victim, that she had been caring for him, and she was grieving for her loss too. The judge asked for proof, and she said that she didn't have any other than his body, buried in her mom's backyard. And that was it. None of this meant anything to me anymore. I didn't care what I ended up with at that point. All I wanted was my dog, and she couldn't even give that to me. I remember going back to my apartment and crying. Crying like a child that had just lost his first pet. I had friends and family stop by for comfort. They brought me food and gifts from my new home, but it still felt so empty without my buddy. But then, about 4 days after that court date, I got a call from an animal shelter. They asked if I was Aiden, and I said that I was. They called to confirm if I had surrendered my dog Biscuit or if he was lost and found. I almost dropped my phone. I thought this was a prank. Someone Jennifer knew that was just trying to screw with me, and I almost went off. I asked her what she meant, and she said that they had what looked like a retriever mix that was brought in about a week prior by an older woman, saying that the dog had just been walking around on the side of the road, like someone had left him. They were pretty busy and full up, so they hadn't had a chance to scan him for a chip until that day, and they found my contact information. I had had him chipped as a puppy. I was at the shelter in less than 20 minutes. The second they brought him out, I knew that it was Biscuit. He was thinner than I had ever seen him. He looked exhausted and his coat was dull. But when he saw me, he started yelping and pulling toward me so hard that the shelter worker almost lost her grip on the leash. I was asking them how they found him, and they explained that it was an older lady that had brought him in. He had on a collar, but she took it off of him, claiming it was for her own dog and was just using it to restrain him. But then she said it was odd because the lady didn't seem to care about finding the owner or anything. Just basically pushed Biscuit onto them and quickly left. Based on her description, I guarantee it was Jennifer's mom, and she just took Biscuit's collar, both of them thinking that there would be no way to trace him back to us. I guess Jennifer forgot that I'd had him chipped. They gave me Biscuit back after showing them my ID, and they waived the fee. I called my lawyer on the way home with him. Not only did she refuse to let me see him or have him back, she was not keeping up on his meds. She had lied to the judge about him being dead and then just abandoned him. and now I had proof. We filed another emergency motion, and the hearing was brutal. The judge ordered her to explain herself, and she got defensive, saying that she had made a mistake and panicked. The judge cut her off, and I will never forget what he said. He reminded her how serious it was to lie to a judge in court and reprimanded her, saying that animals are not bargaining chips, that she had just used him as leverage, and when she didn't get her way, she abandoned him. He also told her that if she actually loved him, she wouldn't have acted this way, and that it was one of the most callous displays he had ever seen. I was given full ownership of Biscuit since she surrendered him to a shelter anyways, and she confirmed my suspicions, trying to claim that her mother surrendered him without her knowledge, trying to pin it all on her. So, I got him back on his medication immediately, and he has gained his weight back. His coat is shiny again, and he's back to fully energized Biscuit. And I still have him to this day. He's actually sleeping on the couch next to me as I finish this up. So, yeah, I guess I'm the guy that went to court for my dog. I filed police reports and gave up more in the divorce than I probably needed to, but it was worth it, and I would do it all over again for him. I knew the kind of man that my ex-husband was becoming. Our relationship started off blissful. Sure, we fought like normal couples, but it escalated quickly. He started becoming controlling, jealous, and accused me of having affairs. He even accused me of sleeping with a female coworker because I talked to her and hung out with her too much. We had been close friends for many years before we even started dating. He didn't have a problem with her prior, and she didn't have a problem with him either. But something in him changed, and I never could determine what that was. I know it sounds absurd now, but at the time it was pretty terrifying and exhausting. Every time I sent a text, every minute I was late coming home, every time I laughed at something on my phone, he would twist it into proof of an affair. It didn't matter that there was no affair and there never was any proof of one. It didn't even matter that his accusations made no logical sense. He was convinced. He was relentless, and nothing I said or did could convince him otherwise. I grew up watching my mom cycle through relationships with controlling and abusive men, and I swore I would never let that be my story. So, when my husband's jealousy grew worse, checking my phone while I slept, showing up at my work, rolling through the parking lot demanding to see me, and demanding that I send pictures at that exact moment, no, I said enough was enough. I didn't talk about it, didn't give him a chance to fix it. I left. I packed my things while he was at work, moved into a small rental house across town, and filed for divorce 2 weeks later. And, for a while there, things were quiet. It was like it was going too smoothly, I thought. I didn't hear from him for nearly a month, and I was beginning to think that maybe he would accept it and just move on. Then the divorce papers were filed. The first call came while I was at work, and I missed it. Then another, and then another. By the time my shift ended, I had 14 missed calls and 8 voicemails. The first one was almost calm, saying that he just wanted to talk and wanted to work it out, claiming that I was making a mistake. The second one was angrier and shorter. Each voicemail became more and more unhinged. He was screaming into the phone and calling me every name you could possibly imagine. I thought about calling him back to actually try and talk to him, but then I got the texts that stopped me. There were also dozens of them. Again, some of them were calm, claiming to still love me and apologizing, and then others were vaguely threatening, saying things like, "I would regret doing this," and others were just incoherent rage. I just stopped reading them. but he kept calling and texting for days. So I blocked his number. That bought me about 2 days of peace, but then I started getting calls and texts from new numbers or blocked numbers. But the messages always had the same undertone, the vile insults, the not-so-empty threats. Oh, and not to mention, telling me how much I had ruined his life. So it was pretty obvious that it was still him. So I did the only other thing I could think of to do, and that was to file a police report and try to get a restraining order. I kept the screenshots of all the messages and the list of missed calls, and even started keeping track of the phone numbers. The officer who took my report seemed sympathetic, I guess, but told me that there wasn't much they could do unless he violated the order directly. So the order was granted and served to him about a week later. Of course, I didn't want him to violate the order. I was hopeful that he would just get it, know that I was serious about all of this, and finally just grow up and drop it. But it clearly only enraged him more. I guess he needed a new way to torment me without doing it directly, or at least making it harder to trace it back to him. I started getting messages from random men. They were graphic and disgusting messages asking me about rates, services, and if I was still available. I was confused and annoyed. I would be sitting in the break room at work and would get a random text with a not-so-work-appropriate photo right there in my face. I finally got the details out of one of the people that texted me, and he sent a screenshot and link to a Craigslist post. On it was a risque picture of myself from the chest down, my phone number, and email and descriptions of different services that I supposedly offered. This led me down a rabbit hole where I found a similar Facebook page with similar details that also had a picture of me on it. It was one thing that those pictures were out there and random guys were messaging me, but that Facebook page was requesting to be friends with a lot of people from my actual page, including family, friends, and even coworkers. I was mortified, but I also knew that there was only one person that would have those photos of me because they were taken for my then husband. He had used my private photos to get back at me. The whole thing was over the top, horrifying and genuinely embarrassing, but not to mention so incredibly dangerous. Anyone could have tracked me down from those details, since he had used my real name and phone number. So cleaning all that up was a mess. I took some time off work, not being able to bring myself to show my face there. Craigslist wouldn't remove the posts because I wasn't the one who posted them. And Facebook was even worse. I had a few good friends and my sister reported the page for the type of content, and all of them were denied, claiming that it didn't break their rules. Then, I had to go through all the hoops and file reports, prove my identity, and explain to them over and over that I was being impersonated. I finally had some success with both, but the damage was already done. I made a post on my Facebook apologizing to people about it, and then I disabled my account. I changed my phone number, and I created a new email, practically never touching the old one again, and only certain and close people got my new contact information. I even added it all to the police report and explained that he was the only one with access to those photos. The detective assigned to my case said that they were building a case against him for harassment and cyberstalking. It was still in progress when the divorce proceedings continued. He never showed up to court, and his lawyer seemed to have every excuse in the book to try to delay it all. I was just going about my life the best way that I could, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. One night I came home from work, heated up some leftovers, and went to bed pretty early. I was exhausted after a long day, and I just wanted to sleep in. But it was so strange to me because I remember feeling so physically drained, but I could not fall asleep no matter how hard I tried. I ended up not being able to fall asleep until almost 11 p.m. But then I woke up at around 2 in the morning to what sounded like glass breaking. I didn't have any pets at the time, so there was no reason for something to have fallen or broken. I was in the in-between state, trying to determine if I was dreaming when I heard the sound, or if it had really happened. But with how tired I was, I lied there staring off into the dark room for a few seconds. Nothing else happened, so I slowly drifted back to sleep. It wasn't long after that I awoke again, but this time, it was to the smoke alarm going off. I sat up in my bed again, trying to confirm if it was real. It started going off again. I immediately threw the covers off and walked to my door, opening it, and I could already feel the difference in temperature. Down the hall, looking towards the living room, I could see my curtain turning black as the flames climbed up them, the window completely broken. The front door was right by the window, and I was too afraid to approach it. I turned around and ran out of the house through the door in the kitchen. I was in an oversized t-shirt and underwear, no shoes, no phone. I ran to my neighbor's house praying that they would actually answer at whatever time it was. I was banging on the door until that poor old man opened it with a startled look on his face. I told him that my house was on fire and that I needed to use his phone. He brought me in and escorted me to the wired phone in his living room, and I called for help, explaining what little I knew to the operator. The fire department got there fast. They had it out within 20 minutes or so, but the damage was already done. The living room was destroyed, but thankfully it didn't make it much further than that. There was smoke damage in the kitchen, but not much else. The fire investigator found accelerant residue and evidence of multiple ignition points. This wasn't an accident. Someone had set my house on fire while I was sleeping inside. There was no hesitation when they asked if I knew who could have done it. It really wasn't hard to tie him to the scene either. He left the lighter in the yard, the same kind that he always used, as he was a smoker. He randomly decided to stay at his brother and his sister-in-law's house for 2 days, who lived about 10 minutes from me, claiming there was something wrong with the AC at his place. And that night he showed up there, he showed up late. I never had a problem with his brother. We kind of just coexisted, but I think he could also tell that there was something wrong with the situation. The detective told me that he reported him coming home late and acting weird, and I will always appreciate him being honest with the police. So my ex-husband was charged with arson, attempted murder, stalking, harassment, and violation of the restraining order. The trial took even longer than the divorce and cost him a hell of a lot of money, too. But I finally got my divorce and changed my name back. I moved to a different city after it was all said and done, and even got a new job. No matter what I did, I felt that my reputation was ruined there, and I had troubles being around some people. I was basically starting over, but I could not be happier and more relieved. This happened several years ago at this point, and he is still incarcerated, which is why I won't use any real names here. And while our marriage wasn't always bad, I think it'll be a very long time before I even consider getting married again. So that, my friends, was a collection of 3 scary divorce stories. Could this have been a scary ex-lover stories video? Yes, it could have, but I prefer the way I did it, so yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed these stories. I did some interesting times here. Definitely, I think scary is kind of an understatement for these, to be honest with you, but I think they were scary. It's terrifying what a person will do whenever they're pushed out of a relationship, which is kind of a weird way to put it. I don't mean like the other person got pushed out, because from what I could tell from these, they pushed themselves out of the relationships, but yeah. Anyways, hopefully you all enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit that like button. if you are new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider hitting the subscribe button. That'd be awesome. You can also leave a comment down below the video with your thoughts if you choose to do so. I'd really appreciate that. It does help the video do better whenever you leave comments. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Without the comment section, like, videos just don't do well. Interactions are important. So, yeah, leave a comment if you so choose. You can also join Patreon or memberships, get early access to content like this. Depending on which one you sign up for, you get different things. So, there's more. Oh, yeah, send in your stories to astheravendreams.com or astheravendreams@gmail.com if you want to email them in. Both accepted, both work. You can also go to the website, astheravendreams.com. And from there, you can find info on the stories I've written, the book I've wrote, the places where the podcast is available, accolades for the channel, so forth and so on. A lot of things you can find there. So, yeah, check that out. All that said, friends, hope you have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Hope I see you again here soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Until next time, my friends, much love and sleep well.